English. He qualified NET in English and started teaching in the college at the age of 22. He has also served as translator at UGC before studying law at the University of Purdue, where he topped the university with an all-time record. The Rotary International awarded him with Advocate Ranjit Ghosh Memorial Award for academic excellence. He has also worked as a legal journalist with BW Business World. Currently, he serves as in-house counsel at Jeetz Filmworks Private Limited and Grassroots Entertainment Private Limited, one of the largest production houses founded by Jeet, who was a renowned Bengali actor. So before I hand over to Sir, I would once again make everyone aware about the general guidelines that are to be followed by every participant. Please try to keep your videos on during the session. Keep yourself muted during the session. You can unmute and ask questions to the speaker during the question and answers round. If the speaker allows you to ask the questions in between, you can do it, but it will be up to the discretion of the speaker. So now, with the permission of the esteemed speaker, I seek permission to begin the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Jashanpreet. Am I audible? The first thing I need to know is, am I audible and visible?
Yes, sir, you are audible and visible.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you to Rupam and team for inviting me over for this session. To start off, I would like to, really have an open discussion about how we can take this webinar forward. So precisely, I would like you to ask questions if you want in the middle of the conversation that we have. I call it conversation and not precisely lecture series, because that interaction will help us glued, if at all, for the next 1 or 1.5 hours. So precisely, if there are questions that you intend to ask, you can, ask directly in the chat box, or as Jashanpreet has already mentioned, following the protocol that has been there. So, is it possible, Jashanpreet, that we can have an interactive one-to-one session, and with the permission of Rupam as well, if we can
Yes, sir,
have
no
a
issue.
conversation?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
it depends upon you, like how you want to proceed, you can.
All right. All right. So precisely, before starting off, I would like to know why exactly you are here. Like I intend to ask why exactly you are here to attend a seminar on
Sorry,
media laws and
sorry, sir, for the interruption once. Before you begin,
yes,
just give me a minute. Interns, you are
yeah,
not requested to write the name and college name in the chat box. We'll take your attendance at the end. Okay, you can only ask the chat box for the question and answer rounds. Okay, so you do not need to write that. We'll take your attendance at the end of the session. Yes, sir, you can continue.
thank you so much, Rupam. So precisely, I would like to know from some of you why you're attending this session today, the media and entertainment law session today. While there are so many other interesting areas of laws that could perhaps interest you during the course of your journey. So just a basic idea of why media law and why today you intend to attend this session. Is it just widening the horizon, or is it because you have a particular knack for films, music, and other things that are related to media? Anyone can answer. Yeah, yes, please. Ochita can answer.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
So my name is Achita. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Definitely, it is about widening the horizons of our legal knowledge, but most importantly, it is that media is the fourth pillar of democracy. And in today's world, media has come to the power of the government because it has also become the decision makers. It has reached people at the core. So I think media has become so important, and it's important to understand media laws as is important to understand any other civil or criminal law. Moreover, I also have a knack for media. Had I not chosen law, I would have definitely chosen journalism as my field. So I think this is the perfect combination of what I wanted. Thank you.
Perfect. I'll just take another answer from anyone who is interested in answering. Rushan, you may answer if you wish to.
Uh, a very good evening, sir. I'm Rushan. And, sir, the reason why I joined this webinar is because we generally don't talk about these unconventional, a little not talked about branches of law where we can go. As far as I am aware, nobody really talks about how entertainment and media laws and technology laws, all these are intersected and they are helpful in connecting various branches of law. And this is the place where you can go. So I wanted to get some insights exactly what it is and how can you get into this industry.
All right. Um, so precisely, I'd like to start off briefly with my journey, as in why I chose media law, so that you can have perspective as to how you at all intend to go forward in this field or not, and or if you want to look forward to other fields of law, because it's law is, as all of you know, it's varied. So when I started off, like many of you who have taken up law as a first preference, when I started off back in 2014, after passing out of my high school, I had the only option in my mind is to do my degree in English. So I precisely completed my bachelor's in English, and I had media science as one of the courses that I would have to take along as an extra departmental subject along with um, film studies. So precisely, my journey in films media, goes back in 2014, and when we had to study a lot of theory about films. So if you wish to understand how someone's interest or knack develops in a particular field, one must know that there are certain intricacies which law, which there is some intricacies which are beyond the legal perspective. So my perspective started off with my classes in film studies and journalism. So we had a very small portion of the laws that pertain to media, and that specifically did not deal with the media laws that is taught in law schools today. It is basically on the Vernacular Press Act, or the general idea of gagging through various laws that exist back in the day, from the time when we were not independent to the time after independence, and there are certain amendments that went in place. So from there it started, and then after that also my interest in law wasn't really there. So I did my masters in English, and I was teaching in a college where again I was introduced to the interface between law and media. So I was teaching students almost of my age, at the age of 22, where I intended to teach them about communication. So there is structuring of communications, there is communications, there's linguistics. So these are all perspectives that you develop in media, that really helps you to understand how shifted to law. And from the very first day, I knew that I had to do something in law and literature and media. And precisely over the term of, I did my 3 years in literature, and which is another area of my interest, which also no very few people practice, and I have been really lucky to be exposed to
Sir, sorry to interrupt in between, but your network is lacking and your like voice and video is breaking in between.
is it better now?
Like the video is totally blurred, but like we are able to listen you. It's some like in between it lags.
Mm, all right. So should I leave and rejoin, or is it okay now?
Uh, it is better, so you can continue if the problem will persist again. Then we can like try the
Yeah,
other way.
please let me know. I'll definitely try to rejoin and make things better if it at all
Yes, sir.
is in my hands. Okay. Yes. So yes, as I was telling you all, so precisely this interest is something that doesn't develop overnight. So when you are working in a field which is very niche, as someone mentioned, so you need to be very you know coherent around that very idea of why you intend to take that practice up, even when you know that the opportunities are very rare. At least in a place where I am practicing right now, the opportunities aren't great in terms of if you relate it to other areas of law practice, as in real estate practices, mergers and acquisitions, or general corporate practice. So media and entertainment as a field is very small in itself. Even when you go to Bombay, which perhaps has the largest number of media lawyers, even then you'll be seeing them doing general IP work. So, to start off this discussion on what is media law and why it's media law, since you all will perhaps be interested later to, take up some career, and in a particular field of law, you need to understand that media law will not have very big scopes or huge scopes as in other fields. But you need to find your way out, and perhaps I did too. So if you have the will, you'll be finding your way out. That is something you need to understand. But this area of law is so interesting that you'll be learning new things every day, and for a very particular reason you can relate from something as basic as contracts to something which can be quite mind boggling, like the media theories, which might be needed in studying the jurisprudence of the media laws, which is perhaps nothing related to practice, but if you intend to do something in academia, that will be very much interesting. So, media law, so as to say, the first introduction to media law for most of us would be uh, Madhav Divan's book, which is on the facets of media law. So that was my first interface or my first exposure to the media laws as well. But I understood over time that to get into practice, that will not be sufficient because it deals more with the constitutionalism of the media, the freedom of the press, importantly, or the importance of the constitution in understanding the media. But over time, you will realize that there are other things as well which will help you to practice media law, so as to say. So there are many things that you need to understand, which I'll try to, which I perhaps won't be able to elaborate, but I'll just touch upon, which are things like licensing, which are things like the basic agreement contracts, which you need to know when you are dealing with media law, and also how to negotiate those contracts, because in our industry, in the media industry, uh, to be a lawyer you need to know the negotiation part very well. And for that, when you are doing your contracts, or when you are sitting with two people who are intending to sign supposedly an actor and a producer agreement, you perhaps need to know which are the areas that you can negotiate, and on table negotiations are the most vital part of this practice. So, and importantly, the non-disclosure part of the practice is the most vital thing, because not only as in-house counsels or as media counsels, you'll be working with the contracts pertaining to media law, but you'll also be dealing with the personal assets, number one. Perhaps if you're working with someone as big as Amitabh Bachchan or Shah Rukh Khan, you need to work upon the personality rights, which is one of the key areas that is coming into the fore. And also there are certain assets that the company, perhaps in that company that is owned by a particular artist, you need to understand that as well. So there are various laws that you need to deal in when you are while you are practicing as an in-house counsel for specific, for specific areas of law. For people who are practicing just as say a litigation counsel in the media industry, perhaps the things for them will be, a second. For perhaps the things for them would be limited to one particular aspect of the media law, but for in-house counsels, you need to deal with things that perhaps you also haven't studied in law schools, and which I also face every day. You know, as my friend, the first person I asked, I think Archita was the first person I asked. So when I asked why media and why media law, she spoke about the freedom of the press, and the perhaps the idea on why India's press index is going down the line, and over time, why India is being one of the countries who are gagging their journalists. So, importantly, that forms one part of the media law. That forms the constitutional part of the media law practice. So, you are dealing with your constitution, your fundamental rights, and how you need to protect the interest of the journalist. That there are several cases dealing with the same. And importantly, even the last thing that I remember was the most important part was L. Nageshwar Rao saying that we are aware of our fundamental rights, and we do not want our press freedom to be muzzled. And this is right after, the press index of India went down again. But again, you need to understand from the other side, as media attorneys, that when we are talking about press freedom index, because the freedom day, went few months back. So precisely when you're talking about that, the there are agencies who perhaps hold partition views, And perhaps, dealing with them will give us an idea that perhaps all the indexes that happen in media, they are not real. And also you will understand that many of these awards, many of these PR stunts that we call in the layman language, these are done for their personal leverage. So those, there are also certain interests that the lawyers have, and they need to protect those interests as well. Defamation forms a very huge part of the same. So when you're working for an artist, and if there are defamatory content, you need on, say, social media, or say supposedly on YouTube, perhaps you need to give takedown notices. So that is also another important part you need to understand as lawyers. Also, coming back to why, can anyone give me an idea, like if you have studied media laws in your school, can you give me an idea on why do you think the media laws came into the fore in the first place? Or can you tell me the starting point of why media law at all came in the first place? Any idea? Anyone can answer. You can give a wrong answer as well, there is no problem. Anyone? Yes, Devia, please. Please.
Boundaries of the media.
Sorry, could you please come again? I couldn't hear you.
I think
Hello.
media laws came into force to limit the boundaries of the media.
No, they came into the fore for the limiting the boundaries of the media. But why did they come during a time when we did not have independence? Why do you think the British government thought that the media laws should be brought in to to kind of give a structure to the recurrent problems that is happening around them? Why do you think? To keep a check on the
Sir, I
walls
have
of
no
things.
idea.
Okay, no problem, no problem. Anyone else can answer, or Arpita can answer? Hello, Arpita, if you want to answer, you can answer.
Yes, sir. So what I think is there is a constitutional validity, Article 19,
Right.
uh, freedom of speech and expression first, like free to freedom of press, basically. And
19-1, right?
that time, the time duration which you told that before the freedom struggle.
Yeah.
So for the Indians also, ki what they are up to, so Britishers want to keep the check on the media. Like I just read the one of the chat. So that would be also the concept that time.
Yeah, yeah. You're walking in the right direction. So precisely
So
why
can I
they.
answer?
Yes, please, Riddhi, please answer.
Yes. So I believe that during the British era, the media was a huge influence on people, especially about the freedom struggle. So to regulate that, the Britishers formed policy to regulate the media so that they can regulate the minds of the people.
Right. I'll just add something to what you said, and you are absolutely correct. Is there anything to add, Amisha? If you want to add, you may please add.
Yes, sir. So I think I would just concur to the idea of Riddhi. But furthermore, I think even before that tenure, there was this law journal, I don't remember. There was something related to Vernacular Press Act,
Vernacular
which
Press
we
Act.
read,
Right.
yes, sir, which we actually read in class 11th and 12th in the history books.
Right. Right.
So over there, they actually imposed the writings of the people. So basically, the restriction of the freedom of speech and expression through the newspapers. So this
Perfect.
was the idea which
Perfect.
came to my mind.
Perfect. So it is the newspaper, that's because the new media and everything came right after the liberalization happened in the other parts of the world, and then happened in India in 1990s, early 1990s. So before that, the only mode of conveying was perhaps the newspapers. So starting with the older newspapers, the media laws, how they were writing news which were full of patriotic fervor, and as a patriotic fervor you know would mean more on the line of sedition. So what we call about sedition, UAPA, and the laws today, they were all draconian laws that happened back in the time of the Britishers. Yes, Kesari by Bal Gangadhar Tilak is a good example, very good example. So precisely they were writing against the Britishers, and to curb that, the Britishers brought in few laws. They brought about the Gagging Act, and as a result of which, the entire structure of the media and what you could publish would go through a kind of screening process. Without the screening, your news will not come out to the public, and that is one of the most important factors. Now, coming down to the last, say, last 20-30 years, there has been a lot of changes in the media, and media has undergone a lot of new mediums importantly, and the medium of expressions have also changed importantly with more access to the internet, as we call. So with that, we see that the, to bring in more foreign direct investments to every to the other areas that actually deal in our policy restructuring, the media also went about a huge change, and the huge change would be in the form of new medias, as I already mentioned. So before, when the journalists used to go to journalism schools. I went to a journalism school just for a month, by the way. So I dropped out of it. So when they used to go to journalism schools, there used to be only print media or the FM or the radio media, which they used to study in their journalism schools. But after that, the new media came into the fore, by means of which you would learn your broadcasting rights and everything, pertaining to how you can move beyond the written, or say the transmittory part of communicating with the others through mass media. So that came into the idea in the last 20 years only. And again, I perhaps people understand that the importance of print media is somewhere falling down. But however, that is the work of the journalist to, to get that back into track. But however, you need to understand that with time, there came about new legislations that actually deal in the newer media laws as well. But if I talk about acts or laws that govern media laws, there will be so many of them that you will not find any coherence. But there are certain things that we can, discuss for the, crunch of time that we actually have, and make it kind of an explainer piece on those particular things. Like for example, I'm not sure if I can share this, how to share this.
Sir, you can present your screen.
A second. So, just let me know if it's visible or not. I'm not very sure if it's visible. Is it visible? Hello, is it visible?
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
yes.
All right. Okay, okay, fine. So these are the things that we have already spoken about. And coming to the regulatory part, there are two important bodies that we need to talk about when we study media law as a course. Media law would actually, the digital media that I'm talking about is the new media per se, but there are also certain other verticals in new media, but digital media being one of the most important parts. So digital media is regulated by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, which is called MeitY in short. I think the I here that has been should be in small, but however it's given in caps here. That's my mistake. So the TRI is another body which brings out a lot of consultation papers, and perhaps we'll talk about one consultation paper which is very important in studying media law, and that is called the idea of the media pluralism, and why media pluralism is very important in surviving a democracy. So that actually translates our entire concept back to how we are understanding the constitutionalism and the media law. So the pluralism is one part of it. And another thing that we'll be talking about in brief are the explainers or the regulatory frameworks around the print, films, broadcasting, and digital media, and the licensing requirements for the television channel uplinking and downlinking, for the radio stations, for the DTH, for the HITS, OTTs, and other online advertisements. And there are very interesting cases pertaining to advertisements, if I may say. So if I start talking about the case laws in all of these, it will not be possible within the time frame that we have been allotted. But let's just understand few things about why the print, films, broadcasting, and digital media, how their how their influence on the current scenario in developing a regulatory framework around the media laws is very important. Now, coming to a second. Is the screen still visible for the untitled presentation? Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
the screen is
All
visible.
right. All right. All right. All right. Okay. So, so while we're talking about licensing, I would like to briefly understand from some of you, what do you understand by licensing? Why is licensing important, and what actually licensing can attribute to, importantly, or what benefits do these licenses have in general? I'm talking. Let's talk in some layman terms, like why licensing is important supposedly for something as basic as a music. We'll talk about the kind of music licensing that actually is there in the media industry, but let's just talk about why license, what do you understand by licenses, and how licenses are important in having a kind of an overall concept of how these regulatory frameworks will be developed around this licensing procedures. The licensing has definite procedures, and they are very important in developing a business around the media and the entertainment industry. So let's just talk about. Anyone can answer. Anyone?
So I don't know if I'm wrong, but I think it's because so that the content which is coming through the media, it should be authentic, and it should have a good source, and it's not irrelevant or something which is fake, as it can affect a huge amount of people.
Now, I'm asking why licenses. Licenses. What do licenses actually, lead to? Any idea? Any idea? If no, there's no problem. Okay, so let me just tell you briefly. So see, whenever you are running a business of sorts, when you are running a business that adheres to the guidelines of the ministry, um, that needs to be done in accordance with certain procedures. So this procedural guidelines have to adhere to, and these are the licenses. License is a very basic thing. So whenever you are running an entity, you need to get, whenever, say, supposedly you're running a food business, you need to get your food license from FSSAI. Or supposedly if you are going to run a school, one of the most basic licenses that you would be actually needing is a fire license for the safety of the kids out there who are studying. So licenses are nothing. Licenses are actually certain guidelines are set by the ministry and these regulatory bodies, and these guidelines have to be adhered to by means of certain forms that you need to actually sign, and certain infrastructures that you actually need to develop in order to make your business compliant with certain rules and regulations that the ministry sets for those kind of business. So the licenses are for those reasons, nothing other than that. So yes, so let me talk a little about why the print is very important. Why the print media is very important. So can anyone tell me who actually regulates the print media in India? Anyone? Which ministry regulates the print media in India? Anyone? Okay. No, not a problem. So the print media is actually regulated by Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. So it's called MIB in small. And there are certain acts that while talking about the acts that came right after the independence. So these are certain acts that you will be hearing quite often if you're in the media industry: the Press and the Registration Act, the Registration of Newspapers Acts, which also have allied rules along with it. So these actually help contain the rules in the print media industry. The print would generally mean the newspapers, but it would also mean periodicals. They would mean magazines, and they would mean certain and also they will be containing guidelines for the journalists working in the print media. So these are called, I believe, central media accreditation guidelines or rules. So these have come very recently, last year in 2022, and they will actually help you understand that in what working conditions must be set for the journalists working in our industry. So for that, you need to understand or read the Central Media Accreditation Guidelines, and also there are other guidelines that are associated with the print media. But these are the very basic when you are working in the print media. And for the journalists also, if anyone intends to be a journalist later, maybe legal journalist. Many of you can work in the media industry as journalists as well as a legal journalist. For them also, these guidelines are very much important while you are moving out, while you are doing your journalisming, as I call it. And when you are collecting stories, when you are getting the stories on board, when your stories perhaps will might have such certain copyright infringement issues, everything can happen. And for you to understand in what are the best practice conditions, you need to read the Central Media Accreditation Guidelines 2022. Now, coming to the second part, it's films. So the films, that is a very interesting area, and we have a lot to discuss, but perhaps I won't be able to discuss. But let's just talk about, anyone knows about any recent legislations that have come up pertaining to movies, films? Anyone? Any act, any amendments that have come to the fore? Anyone? Or have been accepted by the ministry, and which will actually again go and go for consultations. There will be certain other consultation papers, and it will finally become an act, an amended one. So, anyone have any idea? Okay, not a problem.
So there was this amendment, which was like the tribunal which used to check the censorship of the film. It got dissolved by the central government. They dissolved it. It's something called FCRA. I don't remember it.
Yeah, you are right. But the act that I'm talking about is which will perhaps undergo a lot of amendments, and to check on the piracy that have been happening in India, because India is not a very regulated market for the films, because the pirated films come actually are released often, at least in the Bengali film industry. If you look at the Bengali film industry or such another regional film industry, the piracy and the agents have spread out uh, so well that the release of the pirated movies come before the release happens, much before the original movies come to the theater. So that is a huge concern, and to stop that only, precisely the new bill for the cinematography has come into play. Now, when you are working supposedly in film, and you need to get your agreements in place. Otherwise, what happens is that, since it's not a very regulated industry, this is the one thing that I keep talking about. It's not a very regulated industry. The film media production industry is not a very regulated industry, which means that the contracts that you make or the agreements that you do, that needs to be that needs changes often on the table. And for that only, the media lawyers need to be on the lookout for follies, for gaps, for whatever rivets that you need to make at the right time. The bill that I'm talking about is the cinematography bill, but the rules came out back in 1983. So for that, the board that we talk about, who actually censor the films and says that certain films are good, certain films are bad, certain parts need to be removed, certain songs need to be removed, or parts of the songs need to be removed. That's called the censor board for film certification, CBFC. So whenever a movie comes, you can see CBFC certification on the very beginning of the movie. So that is the CBFC certification. So precisely, what I think was saying, Vicky, I think she was talking about I believe the tribunal reforms ordinance. That was what we were talking about. Hello. I think you are talking about the tribunal reforms ordinance. So precisely, not only that, but there are certain other smaller amendments that have been done in order to keep up with the changing rules and regulations around the around the films and around the media industry. So there are also certain wings, like the MIB has a separate wing besides the regulatory body of CBFC. There is a films wing. In West Bengal, if you see, the Ministry of Information and Culture, which is often associated with the film festival in Kolkata and in West Bengal. So they have a separate unit which look after the issues and the disputes pertaining to films. So there also certain lawyers work, and they work towards understanding that if there are certain regulatory issues, number one, number two, if there are issues which do not adhere to the Copyright Act, and number three, if there are certain issues which actually can harm the religious sentiment. But on top of that, I do not want to trade into the religious sentiment part, given there are certain new movies that came around, and certain cases being filed before the high courts. So I do not want to speak about the religious sentiments part, but for a reason, these exist, and to understand the same, you need to understand why a movie was brought in the first place. So the role of a media lawyer is not only pertaining to the contracts that are there when an artist signs the agreement, or when say a music producer signs the agreement, but it also pertains to the fact that when the story is being written, you should be present there, and you need to see that there are certain legal complications that might arise from the story itself. That is one of the very important things. Supposedly, I know this advocate, I know this lawyer who was present during the storytelling section of Tamhane's Court, which is one of the best courtroom dramas. If you have watched it, and you must watch it if you haven't, which shows a real picture of the Indian coast. I think much more than what Jai Bhim or other films can do. So the lawyer was there to understand that if there any legal complications can happen while you are you know kind of narrating the story, and the story will be made into a film. So the lawyer's role in a in-house say production house or a media house doesn't stop or doesn't start only at the contracts, or doesn't stop only at the notices that you need to send, or take down notices, or say supposedly the infringement notices that you need. But it is also pertaining to being from the very initial formulation of the entire movie, which many of us actually do. I do not know how it happens in Bombay, but for our industry, the lawyers work very closely with the actors, and when they're signing an agreement, the entire story is read, is vetted by the artist, sorry, by the advocate, or the counsel, and then it goes for signing by the actor and the company that will actually be producing that film. Yes. So the broadcasting is another important. The broadcasting right is another important. Supposedly a movie is made. Now that needs to be broadcast in major say channels which did not have the rights before. So you give them the broadcasting rights. There is also certain other rights in the media industry which are called satellite rights. Now, the broadcasting rights in India, they are actually regulated by the Cable Television Networks Regulation Act, and also there are associated rules that came about just a year before the act came into place, which are called the CTN rules, or the Cable Television Network rules. I think it's 1994, and just a year before the act came into place. Now, why these acts are important. Now, I'll just talk about very briefly. Otherwise, to start and talk about all the acts in place, I don't think I'll be able to finish. But just let's talk about why the CTN rules are there in the first place. Now, for CTN rules, the registration and licensing for the cable operators are very important, because licensing, as I kept saying, that licensing is the most important part, and the CTN Act actually ensures that the licensing is done, and and the advertising content of that particular show, or the particular content that you are consuming, that is done in accordance to the rules and regulations. For that, it exists. And also there are certain other regulations pertaining to the CTN rules. An amendment was brought in, and in 2021 we got the new rules, the amended rules. Um, so the constitutional validity of these provisions, you know, have also been challenged often. Now, those who are making these rules are often not people who are directly involved in the business. Now, that is a huge problem with many other laws that we talk about, that people who are not stakeholders in a particular thing, how they will understand why the rules and the regulations should come in the place in the very first place. But um, I think the major damage, or what my seniors also talk about, the major damage that has been done in not knowing a particular aspect of the media, it has been done to the media industry mostly, and for that, several pleas have been there pertaining to the CTN rules as well. Now, another important thing that often you will not find in any book is this particular. I'm not sure. Yeah. So if you can see, there is something written which is called television channel uplinking and downlinking. Now, does anyone have any idea about what can uplinking mean, or any basic idea on what uplinking actually does? Anyone? You can give me a wrong answer as well. I keep on saying. Anyone? What is uplinking?
So is it somewhere related to uploading of the content of the channels? I mean, I don't know. I just tried.
No, 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 no. Yeah, yeah. Could you come again? I couldn't hear you properly.
Is it somewhere related to uploading of the channel content and like how it reaches the people?
Um, Not really, but yeah, I'll just get into this entire thing in a bit. So uploading and uplinking are two different things, I believe. So they for media channels, it's a technical thing. You need to understand a bit of your tech laws. I don't think you need to know tech laws for this, but it's a uplinking and downlinking is a communication. The communication is developed, and you are transmitting a message, which is an electronic message to satellite. So it's uplinking. Mane, the channel is transmitting it to the satellite. That's why it's uplinking. And why it's downlinking? The downlinking is because the communication channel is receiving the electronic signals from the satellite. So people think that media laws would only be pertaining to these issues around the contracts or the agreements, but no, they have certain technical aspects with it as well. So uplinking and downlinking would essentially mean that communications or transmission of those communications in electronic form from from the channel to the satellite in case of uplinking, and from the satellite to the channel in case of downlinking. So that is a very basic idea of what uplinking and downlinking actually is. So for these satellite transmissions, there are also certain guidelines which are not given by MIB, but even Ministry of Home Affairs have their separate security clearance scheme, after which only these downlinking guidelines can be complied with, and a company can be fully functioning. So it has certain, I believe that when you go back home today, you can actually Google a little bit, or search a little on what uplinking and downlinking has actually been, and how they have been a problem in certain Middle Eastern countries, and also uplinking and downlinking problems and satellite issues after the Arab Spring. There are so many articles that you'll be finding from various media portals, and I think you will find interest in it if you just uh, look for it for yourself. So the idea is that the security clearance is very much needed for such downlinking or uplinking, and MHA, the Ministry of Home Affairs, actually have their own set of guidelines for the downlinking and uplinking. Now, radio stations, we are all aware of how radio stations function. Um, any idea about how radio stations function? How do you get to hear the music from the radio stations? Very basic idea. Anyone? Anyone? You can give wrong answers, please. Please try, interacting. I think it will be much better. There is no problem if you cannot, because I'm also learning along with you. So let's just keep it very open. How do you think that, you're getting to hear the music, getting to hear the radio, say the events that happens on the radio channels? How does it reach to you? Anyone? Okay, not a problem. Okay, so radio before, like the FM thing that FM that we all talk about, that did not exist in the first place. There used to be short waves and long waves, and through that only, people you had to buy those channels, for a very basic amount, and through that you could transmit the transmit through those long and short waves. After that, the FM came into place, and now things have now the FM is also falling from its position of popularity. But the radio stations operate in a strange manner, which is much different from how the television channels operate. So, for private radio stations, the licenses that the private radio stations get, they have an auction basis. Now, how the auction works, that is a very complicated deal. I'm not getting into that, but understand that there is an auction basis, and that happens in a very phased manner when you are going for private radio stations. And now there are certain FM guidelines, FM policy guidelines, and the compliances are very much similar to a television channel or other channels. And perhaps there is an application processing fees to participate in that very thing, and the processing fees is somewhere around 25,000 to 30,000. I think it's 25,000 mostly. So the eligibility criteria of the applicants will be seen, and after that, your radio channel can be the radio channel. The auction process of the radio channel will happen in first, second, third phase. It happens in that manner. Now, why this is important? Because there will be many bidders when you are talking about the radio channels. There will not only be one bidder will be taking up that particular, supposedly 98.5, 98.7. So a letter of intent is needed to be given. So for that you will be getting what? You will be getting various things, like you will be getting your frequency allocation, like as I mentioned, 95.3, 98.3, 99.3. Those are the frequency allocations that will be given to you. Now, a clearance is also needed. The clearance is needed just like we spoke about the satellite rights and the bodies that are actually looking after it. There will be a advisory committee on the radio frequency allocations, which is called SSCFA. So it's called Standing Advisory Committee on Radio Frequency Allocation. So that is called SSCFA. So after that, after you show all your financials and everything, you'll be appointing your key executive, and then finally Prasar Bharati, you will be making an agreement, and your LOI will be again very important in that particular phase of getting the radio in place, getting the FM radio in place, and there will be creation of a CTI. CTI is Common Transmission. I think infrastructure, it's an interface. That interface will help you to set up that entire process within a period of say 3 months to 4 months. So after that, you get your permission, and the permission is through an agreement which is called the grant of permission agreement. So this is how the radios come into place. And the FM channel, after you are submitting the LOI, supposedly a year back, the entire process of getting registered and getting the agreement in place and getting the GOPA, your FM will be operational within 12, that's a minimum. 2, if there are certain other regulatory complications, it will be done within 24 months. So it's a huge process. It's not very easy that you go and you ask someone, go to Prasar Bharati, write a letter that I need a particular frequency. I like 100.3 very well. So please give me 100.3 and I'll set up a radio channel. It doesn't work in that manner. So there is a lot of compliances involved. Yes, the community radio channels that we speak about, which operates on an online platform, that has much lesser compliances, and perhaps often there are radio channels set up by the universities and colleges that do not adhere to any of the compliances because those are online, so they are not under all these regulations that we just spoke about. But for an FM channel like say Radio Mirchi or say our Rainbow FM, excuse me, these compliances are very important. Um, Now let's talk a little about the OTT platforms, because that is one of the most important, um, how to one of the most important paradigm developments, say in the last 5 to 10 years, because the OTT has even taken the whole internet by storm. The licenses for OTTs also, for the very purpose that the OTT platform will be showing a particular event, a particular, say, a coverage of a particular event, or say it will be showing some movies, their own movies. So the broadcasting rights have to be also bought when it's an OTT platform. And the OTT platforms, there are so many ruling judgments, pertaining to OTT platforms and the copyright infringement. Supposedly, um, there was this OTT channel. I think it still exists or not, which is called Ullu TV, which had a lot many infringement in infringement cases filed up before the uh, Bombay High Court. So, because someone was stealing their content and they were releasing it, happens every day whenever the OTT platforms come into, come up with their own shows. They are stolen and they are released in Telegram channels, because that's the best part. And Ullu actually has their own original content has been stolen for say over 2 years, and in spite of filing so many infringement notices, sending them notices, sending them takedown notices, nothing happened. So the cases seem very interesting, but how much we'll be able to work on the regulatory part, and how much we'll be able to bring the content under control, so that they are so that the infringement doesn't occur, I'm not very sure, because these cases have been filed, but still the content is widely available on the these kind of Telegram channels, and torrent links are there. So this is a problem with our industry, and nothing has yet been done about it. So, okay. So I think the next is online advertising. Okay. So advertising is another part. Advertising has so many, uh, wonderful implications. Advertising teach you. Advertising can be didactic in nature, meaning that they will have some moral values in place, or they'll be touching upon certain chord that you actually relate to in your life. But there is again a problem. So we have to understand in layman's terms. So there are certain advertisements we see, supposedly an iPhone coming out, and they directly hit at Samsung, saying that Samsung is a trash product. Samsung has made a trash product, and Apple, we are making much better product, or vice versa. So how much of it can we actually do, or how much of the advertisement can actually show? That is another important another important guidelines that needs to be followed. So you cannot directly go and talk to your, because the competing advertisements are very much allowed, but advertisements where you're directly attacking your competitors by mentioning them perhaps, or by passing sly comments, I think many of such cases are still running and still pending the uh, before the benches. So that needs to be regulated, and the lawyers in that regard, when they're working with certain advertising firms, that is their work to understand that if their competitor is actually making a sly remark, and how to send them notices. So many of my friends who are working in the advertising industry, their work is to see if the content, if their advertising content is stolen somewhere down, if they actually are adhering to the advertisement code, which the CPN Act and the CPN Act that I just mentioned, and the CPN rules that have already been mentioned. Those are they are prescribing an advertising code, and if the code is being followed. So my friends who are working in the advertising industry are actually looking after this, and seeing how the competitors are kind of making their own advertisements without causing a lot of reputational damage to this particular company. So that is mostly the work that a kind of a transaction lawyer in say an advertising company, they do. So there are certain guidelines for the TV advertisement and the TV commercials, which I can mention, which are called ASCI Code for Self-Regulation in Advertising, ASCI guidelines for online gaming and real money winnings, and guidelines for promotion of virtual design assets and linked services. So these are separate guidelines which have already been, which are already in place. And I believe that, the with making certain amendments in the CGN Act itself, I think the regulations will be more solid, and I think acting upon such infringements, or uh, activities which are not allowed or which are not permissible by the advertising code per se, will be dealt with much better. So this is basically what the online advertisement, the particular functioning of the advertisement happens. And people who are working in the and the lawyers who are working in the advertising industry, they actually deal with these kind of infringements. Now let's talk a little about okay, this is a very I believe that most of you have read CTC. So anyone can tell me a little about John Doe order? I think this is easy. This is nothing to do with IP per se. I mean, strictly IP or media law per se. This is a part of CTC. Anyone? John Doe, it's there on your screen. If you can explain it to me. Anyone? Okay. Okay. So this, as you can already read the order and the rule, it is mentioned. So why is it important in in relation to media and the entertainment industry? Because it helps you, to safeguard the intellectual property of the artistic works, such as in movies and in songs. And it's a kind of a pre-infringement injunction. Can you tell me what is a pre-infringement injunction? Anyone? Anyone? Hello? Am I audible? Hello?
Yes, sir, you're audible. We have one answer in the chat box by Riddhi. No idea.
Oh, oh. So, so when you are, working with, so when you are talking about a pre-infringement injunction, means that before the infringement happens, you are already, using the particular benefits of that order in order, so that your particular intellectual property rights is safeguarded. So the John Doe order, which is also called the Ashok Kumar order, or that is very much, applicable for all those cases that we do or that we deal in regularly. And it helps us to perhaps, approach the court in case of any such infringement upon the content. And this is basically to do with the copyright. Also, this is the most important and the vital part of, practicing in the media and entertainment industry, is to understand the types of agreements. So there are co-production agreements, broadcasting agreements, film rights agreement, songwriter agreement, artist agreement, digital marketing agreement, distribution agreement, synchronization agreement, talent release agreement, vendor agreements, recording agreements, and trademark and copyright license agreements, amongst others. So I'll just talk about, a little about on the practical side of how it actually works and how you need to do the negotiations on the table. So supposedly, recently we had been, I'll not delve much into the details of the film. So we have been working on a film for on a pan India release, since we are regional. We make regional films. So for the very first time, we went for a pan India release, and we wanted some songwriters and songwriters and singers from Bangladesh. So for that very reason, there are certain changes that needs to be made in the contract. Supposedly, for example, that whenever you are doing a contract, and if it's possible, I'll show you how actors agreement or a production agreement works. And if I have one or two examples, I'll just look at it if I have it in my drive. So what you need to do is that there are certain problems when you are transferring a money to say a composer who's sitting in Bangladesh. For the very reason that your company, supposedly XYZ Company Private Limited, is a company with a particular PAN number or a CIN number. Now, when you are transferring the money to a person, a individual person who's the supposedly the composer sitting in Bangladesh, they will not have a PAN number. For that, you need to find out, because they will not help you always. You need to find out the NID details, and then there is Bangladesh BRSE Bank, which I finally found out from its NID number, which is their national identification number. From there, you'll get the details. Like, we have the Aadhaar and everything linked. So we kind of tried to find out the details from his NID number, and then finally we got the BRDC account number, and we could do a transfer of the money, because that was not happening initially, and we could not understand why the problem was actually occurring when we were transferring the money to someone sitting in Bangladesh. For that very reason, because the person would also not be able to come to India when the particular agreement is being signed. Also, another important thing is that you need to know your tech laws also very well, because for the very reason, you cannot just, when you are doing the contract, you cannot just do a signature and do a scan and send it to that person in Bangladesh. You need to get a digital signature done, and it must be digitally signed as well. So the other person, if that other person doesn't know how to do a digital signature, that will also be a problem. So the lawyers will also come into the play when you are negotiating such contracts. Also, for the very reason is that there are often issues in the media industry, which are pertaining to financing. So there is one very important clause which many lawyers now add, is that you need to be very open about where your financing is coming from for the production of the movie. In Bengal, there has actually been instances where cheat funds, the big cheat funds, the cheat fund scams, they have actually provided huge financing to the media industry, and as a result of that, they were also under the scanner of the investigation agencies. For that very reason, the lawyers who are doing their contracts, they need to very well understand that one of the key clauses while you're making the contract is to mention a clause that you need to be very open about the source of your funding, and the source of the funding should also mention the bank details, and the IT returns and everything should be very much proper, because nowadays the artists as well as their personal lawyers, they are doing the due diligence while you're working with the artist. So it's not precisely something that you download from the internet, a draft. You need to do the draft completely on your own in accordance to the situation. For what we have noticed in the industry is that, at least in the Bengali film industry where I work as a lawyer, is that we do two separate types of agreements. One is for the daily artist or the daily professionals who come, and another for those leading actors or actresses who will be there working every day in the particular film. So for them, we do a larger contract, and for the other people, like for the professionals who will be needed on particular days, we do a smaller contract for them, which will not have a lot of technical details, because often we see that the contract that we make, they become so difficult that the person who's signing the contract often doesn't understand what is being written there, and in case of a dispute, you have to run to the courts again, and that's a problem. So another important thing what we have seen in the contracts is we are keeping a scope for an arbitration. So a sole arbitrator is generally appointed nowadays in case of any disputes. Though the disputes are very rare, but in case of any disputes, a sole arbitrator would actually serve the purpose rather than going to the courts within the jurisdiction of that particular, say, industry. Supposedly, if it's a film industry in Kolkata, supposedly if it's a film industry in Kolkata, the jurisdiction would be West Bengal. However, there are also other negotiations that you need to understand. Like, for example, say an ex-actor needs to do his promotion. For that very promotion, he will be appointing an agency. That agency is called Talent Management Agency. The contract with the talent management agency would also be much different than his personal PR. He has a personal PR team. Every actor, every company, they will have their personal PR team who are working in the media industry. But along with that, they will be also keeping they will be involving certain other agencies who actually deal in these kind of work. So what the contracts would actually contain? These contracts would contain that for XYZ tenure, say for 1 year, we will be doing all the promotions, we will be getting you all the vendors for whom you can do the advertisements, for whom you can do the commercials, and we will take X percentage. The X percentage is generally 10% to 15% according to however suits the company and the particular talent, find talent in quote. So whenever you're doing an actors agreement, the particular actor is the actor. But when you're doing a talent management agreement, the actor becomes a talent. These are the smaller nuances that you need to understand while you are drafting your contracts. So the talent management contract would actually contain, maybe you overlook a clause which mentions that in case of any disputes, you have to go to suppose it is something that we have signed just a few days back. We had to go to a court in Bangalore which will have the jurisdiction. But then we strictly negotiated with them that this cannot happen. The talent cannot go to Bangalore, and this entire thing needs to be done in Kolkata. And along with that, if that cannot be done, in case of dispute, we'll be appointing a sole arbitrator in that regard, as I already mentioned. So these are the smaller nuances that you need to keep in mind. Also about the payment of the money, why I am talking about instant response and the prompt response of the lawyers is because there are contracts that the actors, there are contracts where certain clauses will be there. The X percentage of the money needs to be done before dubbing, after dubbing. There will be clauses pertaining to the fact that the dubbing will be done only by X person. So these are the places that need to be looked at very carefully. And the rights, if you're working for a production company, the rights must be seen that all the dubbing rights, all the rights of post production, all the rights of advertisements, they must belong to the production company alone and not to any other person, not to the actors who are acting in that particular film. So these are the very small things that we need to keep in mind. Okay, so I'll just if I discuss more, I think it will take a longer time. So just let's talk a little about the other services that are provided by the media lawyers. So besides the services of contracts and besides the services of negotiations, there are other things that the lawyers deal in while they're working in-house as a media counsel. And these are anti-piracy due diligence. What are anti-piracy due diligence? Supposedly, you are working in a production house. You have your new film is going to come, and you have released a YouTube video of that particular song, and it's a very popular song. Now, someone picks that song up, changes certain things because it's quote unquote influence according to the fair dealing concept in copyrights, and they somehow release it in the YouTube channel. Now, when you're sending them the takedown notice, they are sending a counter notice to YouTube saying that we haven't infringed upon anything, and generally it happens for YouTube that in 10 days you have to send a reply. In another 10 days you have to send in a reply to the counter notice that has been served to you by the company that has actually, by the particular site that has actually infringed upon your content. So these are all the complications that actually happen. So who will be looking after these things? The social media people wouldn't be looking after these things. That it's the lawyers who need to keep a check on wherein these content are actually going, how much of it is influenced, and if they're commercializing on the particular song that has been released by your production house, and to how to fight a legal battle in that particular regard. You need to send out notices in that regard, and you have to deal with all these things. So the due diligence is also one of the most key things for an in-house lawyer working in the media and entertainment industry. So there are other things that you can actually see on your screen, which are like the advisory on the digital rights management and the website checks to detect online piracy, detecting infringing torrent websites, legal notice to the ISPs to block infringing content, and the court proceedings including securing John Doe or Ashok Kumar orders, as I already mentioned, the infringement injunctions. So these are the key things that media lawyers actually deal with. Now coming to the last part, I would like to talk a little, and that's a very small portion of. I, is the music licensing in India compliances gaps and the way forward? This article is this visible? Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir, it's visible.
Okay. 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 So, while I was a student and I was studying at the university, I happened to meet a doyen of the media and entertainment law sector, and she's very well known in the music circuit. Her name is Surendra. She was a VP legal advice, and currently she is working with indie artists pertaining to indie artists looking after their compliances, copyrights, and everything in place. The indie artists only, because to represent these big music channels, to represent these big music production houses, there are a lot of lawyers. But for the indie artists, there are very few lawyers who will actually be representing. If you know that there has been there hasn't been any infringement case, but there has been a internet shout out video, and pertaining after that, in West Bengal only, what happened was that there was this folk singer who had sung a song Boro Loker Bitilo, and then I think one of the rappers, Badsha, he picked up that song without giving the due credits to that particular singer. So there are various things, because actually folk music is something which does not have an origin, and as a result of this, infringing upon folk music is very easy, especially in the Baul sector. What I have heard from people, I have friends who are practicing this Sufi music and Baul music. What I have heard from them is that since these music they do not have any say any origin per se or any source, infringing upon that music is very easy. And importantly, even big channels, and I wouldn't be mentioning the names of the channels, but they are very popular and they apparently promote indie music scene in India, not in only in India, or even in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, and they're the biggest perhaps pertaining to indie music. They are also infringing upon the rights of these uh, folk artists and the Baul singers without giving them their dues. So this is a problem that has been happening in the media industry for quite some time, in the music industry for quite some time, and the music licensing, for that very reason, has become very important. So the rights of the licensing, I believe, is currently with two very important organizations, and I think you should look into how their website actually functions, and you should have a brief idea about how the licensing works. It's called IPRS and PPL. Anyone have any idea about IPRS and PPL? IPRS, anyone? Anyone of you? PPL, IPRS. Do you know what it actually is? Like what PPL actually stands for? You can tell me that as well. Or IPRS for that reason. IPRS being more important than PPL. Yes, Mochita, you can answer. Yes,
Sir, it is intellectual property rights.
no, no, no. It's not intellectual property rights. It's a body, right? It's a body which looks after the licensing of your music, and it's the only recognized body by the government who can license your music. So currently, the IPRS is one of the organizations, and IPRS actually the chairman or the person who's heading IPRS is a very well-known writer composer. It's Javed Akhtar. So I'll just do a brief walkthrough, because you guys also need to understand that beyond books there are certain other things which you need to read. I'll just show a little bit about IPRS and how you can do the licensing. Before that, I'll just tell a little about what are the things, what are the types of licensing that IPRS they actually do. Let me walk. Okay. So if this is visible, the category is defined under IPRS. So for music licensing, there can be 5 categories. Like even if you want to play music, even if a pub, if you're running a pub business, if you're running a restaurant, if you're running a multiplex or a shopping center, that means you're a place of Commercialization, a place where you're drawing in the customer by using the music, even if it's kind of a soothing environment that you're creating by playing that particular music. They have to buy the music license for that very reason. So that's the first category of the music license that IPRS actually gave. So what are the things that we can see? If you can see, they can be used. They can be used in hotels, guest houses, lodges, resorts, vacation homes, clubs, places of boarding and lodging, even performance in the premises, amusement park, pubs, nightclubs, and shopping centers. They require licenses. Even for marriage and banquet halls, for the sports auditoriums, for the auditoriums, for the sports centers, for the service-oriented premises, all of them need a music licensing. And the first category of the music licensing that will be given by the IPRS is for this category. Now, what is the second type of music licensing? So, if there is a music and some OTT or a physical medium, they want to use it. For that, you need to go with the second type of licensing, which you can see. So, the services of broadcasting of non-interactive music, internet interactive music, broadcasting services, karaoke services on the internet, and use of motion pictures on electronic digital media, downloading, rental, distribution, and sale of physical media, along with utilization of sound recording on electronic digital media through download and physical medium require music licenses. So these are precisely for those that those music you are using for commercial purposes, and you need the license for the same when you are downloading them from the internet or from the digital platform. So that is the second type of licensing. The third type of music licensing, I believe nowadays the Gen Zs will actually not know, but back in our day when we were growing up and we had our first phone, we used to have this, we used to have this. How to put it, we used to call our service operators and pay a small amount and get our favorite ringtone. Like when the other person will call you, you'll get to hear that. So for that also, the particular company needs to buy the licenses, and that is the third category that we are talking of here. Okay. So the next one is the fourth category of the music licenses in India for commercial purposes. This is the sound that will be used for the advertising, videos. So this is the fourth category of the music licenses, and this will be used for advertising, videos, audio, and the promotional video. So for these kind of music, you also need a license, and this is the fourth category. And the fifth category is you are using, supposedly Agni has performed a particular music, and you want to use that music for your live show in some X place. For that, the music license is there, and you need to purchase the music license from IPRS for doing live performance of someone else's music. So these are the five types. Now I'll just help you walk through the website of IPRS for the timing, and I think we can end after that. Uh, um, is it visible? IPRS website. Hello.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So this is the IPRS website, and to talk about what is IPRS, it's Performing Rights Society. Performing Rights Society is it is the only organization in India who can give you the license, and it is recognized. IPRS is currently headed by Javed Akhtar, as I already mentioned. So let us just talk about the chairman's message. The chairman is Javed Akhtar, if I'm not wrong. It's Javed Akhtar right now. So what do they actually do? So see, these are the licenses. Need for licenses. If we go to need for licenses, okay. So why do you need a license? So it's for public performance, television, ringtone or CRBT, OTT streaming, music in commercials, licensing forms. All of them which I have already mentioned. So if you click on them, let me just show you. I just click one of them. Okay. So see, this will tell you which are the verticals that will be covered under this public performance. See, those that I have already mentioned, they are covered here. Okay. And for the general schemes and for conditions like how much money you need to pay for whichever licensing and for how many songs that you intend to play, etc., etc., you need to click on this thing. So I'm not going there. You can, navigate through the website on your own. Okay. So, okay. And another important thing, if you intend to, know about media entertainment laws, if you intend to do a research on media entertainment laws, write on media entertainment laws, to download this one particular book, it is not a replacement of the the Bear app, but this is a handbook of copyright law and actually explains most of the things in very easy language. So if you want an alternative to your Bear app, I think this handbook of copyright law is very important if you intend to look. And this only doesn't contain things about media entertainment. Media entertainment is a very small part of it, but this is for copyright per se. If you want to study more on copyright or to have a simplified understanding, I think other than the Bear app of the Copyright Act, just read this. I think this will be very important.
So can you
This
please
is one
spell
of the,
the name of the book?
sorry, sorry.
So can you please repeat the name of the book?
Oh, it's a handbook of copyright law. It's by the government itself. It's a handbook of copyright. Can you see this? Yeah, so it's a handbook of the copyright law, Government of India, DPIIT, CI. So this is the entire handbook, and I think that you too, if you read this, I think you'll have a very fair understanding of this. Okay. Also, before ending, as I promised, I'll try showing if I have any cleaned up agreements. Just a second, I'll share. I'll try share. Okay, I think I'll be able to show you an artist management agreement. Uh, is it visible? I have shared it already, but is it visible?
Not yet, sir.
This is not happening. Sorry. Can you see it now? Can you see it?
Yes, sir, it is visible now. The talent management agreement.
Okay. Yeah. Um, Precisely for the agreement, you need to have you need to write the names of the companies out here and the person and the name of the talent in mind to um, keep in the Madnani or the key tab that is things are the build up so it's not build up. So as I mentioned, the written fees of the particular for the particular entity who is actually managing the particular talent is generally 10 to 15%. And where you need to negotiate is this part, as in which shall be directly paid to the X person after 7 days from the date of receipt of the invoice from ITW into ITW's designated bank account. So that is the space where you need to negotiate. As in, you need to tell them that when the vendor pays to us, we'll be able to pay your commission, that is 10 to 15%, only when the vendor does it. So there will be a lot of counter negotiations from there, and they'll say that it's not possible, but you need to keep trying to get that in place, like the 10%. Like if they say 15%, you need to bring that down to 9%, then it comes to 10%. So it happens in this particular manner. That is one point of negotiation. Another place of negotiation is that um, for any contractual agreements as such, as in any such agreements that you are doing for a particular artist, there can be clauses as in you cannot give your talent management rights to any other person. But but if your artist is working for working like has a lot of contracts in place, it is imperative that he will have many talent management agencies working hand in hand. So they might ask you that any such point of contact will be made by them only and not through any other person. You need to be very strict. You need to make your contract in such a manner where you will be telling that no, for particular contract we will be giving you for particular contracts you will be handling the talent, you will be the talent manager, and for others this Y company who is also on board will do the negotiations in place, or will bring in the vendors for our actor, that is the talent. So these are the kind of negotiations that need to be done and which no one will teach you. But these are the things that need to be done on the table when you are working as a lawyer to a particular media or to a production company or to a particular actor. If you are a personal lawyer of a particular actor. So these are the changes that you need to make because they will be making it sure that they are the only people through which the agreement goes. They are the only people through which the vendors come and they will be getting the full commission. But that cannot happen if your actor is a big star. There can be multiple talent management agencies who might get on board with you and you have to give work to all of them. Otherwise, it might lead to breach of contract, and that will be very problematic when it comes to the media industry. So because the media industry lies a lot, the entire thrust is lot on the image. If a person is without many controversies, that person is without many litigation case pending against him before the court, or is not in any kind of say huge dispute, I think that person's career kind of progresses without much difficulty. So for that very reason, you not only need to negotiate the contract, but you also need to negotiate the contract in such a manner so that the disputes do not arise at all in the first place. And all this clarity, if there is certain things you have learned from book, certain drafting you have learned from book, and that doesn't lead to a very clarified answer or clarified explanation, you need to make that point in your own language, clarify it, and make that as a clause in your agreement, so that the people who are negotiating, the people who are signing the contract, they can easily understand. So that is another important thing you need to learn. There are other things like the IP ownership and everything which you will find in which you will find in majority of the contracts, confidentiality obligations, etc., etc., about the money involved. These are the things that you'll be finding everywhere. But how to change them according to the situations, how to talk about the payment structure, how to do the negotiations pertaining to the payments, everything is in the hands of the lawyer who's working in house. And especially if you are the only lawyer working in house, like me, if it's a production house where there is only one lawyer working, I think the work travels, and you need to be on your toes all the time and put on some extra glasses perhaps, so that you can see whatever problems arises out of the contract. Because actually when the contract is being made, the other party will make sure that there are certain things which will be not in your favor, and that will be a huge problem later on if you do not read the contract. So reading in between the lines and reading it again and again, these contracts are very important. And I would, if you want to trade, if you want to be a part of this industry, I believe as a lawyer, importantly, do learn your drafting skills. As do learn how to draft in simple language, how to draft in a way so that the people who are getting involved in these agreements, they can understand better, because these drafts will not, like in other cases, will not go to court, but will be exchanged between these entities mostly, and they need to understand what they are signing. So for a very reason, you need to explain every part. So that is another important asset that you must have in order to be a media entertainment lawyer on an in-house media entertainment counsel point. I do not think there are many other things. These are very standard drafts which you need to kind of, which you need to say, yeah, which you need to kind of learn how to draft. And this is very basic. These contracts are very basic, but how to modify them and change them, they are very much in your hands. And with this, I would like to, end today's discussion. I know it went a little, out of place somewhere, because there was a lot of, there were a lot of things to cover, and perhaps I try to touch upon those things that are not actually said in seminars, the technical things of how licensing works, and things which, media lawyers would actually not talk about beyond the book. I tried doing that. I know, as a, I could not do complete justice to the same, but I tried my level best. I hope with time I'll be able to make my presentations a little more concise, so that you guys can benefit. And thank you so much, Rupam and team and Jashanpreet, for having me here. If there are any questions, I'm open to the same. If you want to talk about how to get into this journey, if you want to talk about legal journalism, because that's a huge part of the media industry as well, as very it's something that's picking up very quick as well. I'm open to conversations. So yeah, let's uh, keep the floor open for questions, if you may.
So we have two questions in the chat box, which you asked while you were discussing.
Yeah.
So the first one is from Amisha Sharma.
Okay.
Said those suggested amendments which you have underlined on, have they been approved at present?
Okay, no, they haven't been completely approved at present. They haven't been, but as I already mentioned, there will be more consultation papers on the same, and try. I believe that to understand the same, if you're talking about the guidelines from TRAI, try, you must read the consultation papers that have been released just 2 to 3 months back as well. You will understand that the consultation paper comes out. There will be a counter consultation papers from other entities, and after that the negotiation will be done, and those acts will finally come into place, if it has to come, if it is finally approved. So there are a lot of negotiations that happen when you are bringing such new amendments in place. So I believe that read the consultation papers. I think you'll get a much better insight into the amendments that will perhaps be there, if at all. So yes.
So the next question is from Archita Garg. Could you please repeat the name? She asked the name of the courtroom drama which you mentioned during your
Acha,
discussion.
acha, acha, acha. It's Kamhane's code. It's wait, I'll it's do watch this movie. I believe that this will give you a huge insight. And if there are other things that as media lawyers you can do is, the research part needs to be very strong. So I believe that you need to keep writing on media laws to understand how media actually functions. Supposedly, if a new movie comes and you see that there are a lot of legal imbalances and legal anomalies out there, you should be the first person to write, say, a review, a legal review, because legal reviews aren't really done in most cases. So you need to do a legal review of that entire, say, movie. Supposedly, for example, a few months back, I wrote a review of this is Strategy versus Norway for the business world, and that was perhaps the only review out there available which talks upon, which touches upon the legal imbalances that the entire movie showed. These are the things that you must do. I think you can do. Also, look out for say the industries, not only Bollywood but also the regional industries. I think a huge copyright infringement case in recent times, I think, which every one of you must have read or should read once you go back from the seminar, from the webinar, is Kantara's the Thaikudam Bridge song, which has been reimagined by the Kantara director and the entire for I think what's the name of the song? I think and the district code. So yeah, that is one thing you need to keep yourself updated with the kind of things that are happening in the movie industry, music industry, which are the songs that are being remastered. If the remastering is actually legally allowed or not. These are things you need to keep a track of. So I think that will solve most of the problems. And once you get in practice, I believe you'll learn every day. I had no seniors, I had no mentors when I started out, and I started out very late. But I believe that if you want to learn, there are a lot of ways to learn, and you will learn very easily. So, and importantly, I'm not saying you do not need a mentor or do not need a senior, but you definitely should, explore things on your own so that you can have a better understanding of how things are happening. And of course, if you stop somewhere, you'll have people, people to help you out there. As I sought help from people when I started out, I sought help from people I did not even know from the media and entertainment legal industry, and they have been very kind actually. So I think you should do the same. And with that, I think we should end the webinar if there are no more questions.
If anyone has any questions, you can unmute or type in the chat box as you prefer. Sir, I assume we can proceed towards the end of the session.
All right. Yeah.
So, on behalf of the amicus curiae, I would like to express my sincerest thanks for your presence in the session. Your insights and expertise was invaluable, and it's greatly appreciated. Like, your presentation was very engaging, informative, and moreover, your expertise on the topic was evident in the way you engaged the audience with a compelling analysis of like how the system of licenses work and everything else. And we feel fortunate to have this opportunity to hear from you on this. Once again, like, I thank you for your time, insights, and the passion for the session. We are grateful for this opportunity to have you as our guest speaker, and we hope to have a chance to work with you again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you to Jeetz, and I think Rizikam is here. Hello.
Sir, I guess he is not present in the meeting.
Okay, fine. No problem. I would like to thank Amicus team for having me over. And as a to be very honest, these are very words which do not resonate with the topic for today. But as a first generation counsel and someone who started off very late, to all my dear junior friends, learned junior friends, I would like to just tell you something that you can definitely learn on your own and you do not need someone. That is something that I keep telling my seniors as well. So when I started out, I am from a very small law school and government law school, so precisely. And when we started out, we did not have much resources as well. My media law book, there was only one media law book in the library as far as I remember after 2012. Nothing has been updated as well. But within that given resource, we could do something I perhaps, and among the very few media lawyers operating in Kolkata, I am one of them. So I believe that if I could do it, you could definitely look out for better resources. With adequate students, you'd have better insights and a lot of other resources to jump into a much you know broader or better horizon, a career with a better horizon. And I believe the resources are very much important for you to explore on your own rather than someone helping you with it. Because trust me, I had no seniors when I started out, and that is something that I believe would somewhere motivate you to look for things on your own. And if you need any help, I'm always there on LinkedIn. Do reach out because that is the least I can do for juniors and brighter juniors coming in the profession. So thank you so much for having me, and I wish Amicus Studio all the best and the stakeholders all the best for the journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. I request all the participants to stay back for 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 their attendance.
Definitely, should I leave?
Yes, sir, as you wish.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Have a nice day, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Guys, just stay back for 2 minutes and let me mark the attendance, and then you guys can leave.